Okay, we're going to create an OTS call-up scene now. So first thing I want to do is create a new scene. So I'll come into my database window. Let's call it OTS. We'll double click on it to open it. First thing that I want to do is open or grab that snapshot that I took of the OTS for our placement. So we have that there. Now we need to start creating our elements, and we want to create an element for the producer to be able to change. So we want to give them an option for a headshot and also some bullet point text. So I have this group here. It's going to be my main group. First thing, let's make it title. I come into my font here. I'm just going to drag a font down, go into the orientation. I'm going to center it. We're going to type in title. This will be our title. Let's grab our max size function 2. So we'll go into tools, grab the max size plugin, which I'm also going to place into my favorites. I'm going to slide my title over and kind of place it here. So how big do I want it? Let's say 0.6 maybe. Again, design wise, you figure out what you want to do. I'm just going to keep going and not worry too much about design and waste your time. So max size here, let's adjust this max width down to where it starts to see it, and right around 300 we'll start to see the difference. Here's our title. Again, let's drag a material on that, and if you want to add a font or something like that, a shadow on the font, we can do that. All right, so good enough for now. That's going to be our title, which the producers will be able to change. Again, if you want to change the naming convention, we can do that. I'm going to add a new group. This group is going to be a switch. Let's say the producer or trio operator is going to be able to change this option. The first thing is going to be a headshot. We're going to put a picture in here. So I'm going to map a headshot to some type of object, so when they change out a headshot, it's always going to be correctly mapped to it. So I'm going to use a Nagi. We'll take the stretch down to 0. We'll take our corners down to 0. Let's move this over and kind of say it's going to be, the width and the height is going to be right around here. That should give us enough room for a headshot. I need to find a headshot. So I go into my server, search, properties, images, type in headshot, hit search. Here we have someone's headshot. Let's take this guy. I'm just going to slide him down onto that Nagi. We'll come into the editor. We'll scale it up, place him where we need it. Now be aware that when you create your template in Photoshop for your headshot, it should always be the same size, and when you cut out your headshots, just make sure that they're staying consistent. I want to add a little backplate to this. I'm going to increase the Z position on my headshot to 3. This backplate, let's say it's going to give us a little bit of an extra design. I'm going to take my expert plugin, drag it on here. Maybe we'll change that to add so we get a little bit of texture seen through that as well. So if we want to animate this on, we can. I'm going to center up my center points here, or my axis center, and just say we want to scale this up. So it's going to land there, and at 0, it's going to be 0. So now we have an animation with that coming on. If you want to animate the title onto with a text effects, we can go ahead and grab that. So going into your text effects, we can use a scale. We'll just drag this onto it. Again, progress percentage, I'm just going to set at 100. We'll set keyframe, rewind, take our progress percentage down to 0, hit set key. Now we have 2 elements here animating on. I want to add one more element underneath for the producers to use, and this is going to be like a bullet point, so they can type in some different text and or information. I'm going to grab a font. I'm going to go into my server, F tab. We'll use this font here. So this is going to be bullet point 1. I want to hide my headshot. Again, our max size is going to be important. I'll drag that down in a second. Let's first get the size of this we want. Let's say this is going to be bullet point 1. I want to change my type of font to texture. Slide it over, position it, bring it up in Z position. Let's add the max size so we know what size we're dealing with here. Our transformation is at 0.53, so we'll change this to 0.53. We'll take this down to 300 or so. We'll type it in here and see how that's affecting it. And let's spread it out to about there. If we move it over just a tad, that'll be fine. If you want to add like a little design element to it as well, we can do that. So let's say we have like a little rectangle. I'm just going to make it a subcontainer of that. We can scale it down and make it like a little bullet point 2. Again, bring it up in Z position. With the rectangle, we have our own color generator, so I'm just going to use that and change the color of it and copy it down. Okay, so there's our first bullet point. Again, if you want to add like a little drop shadow to this as well, we can. Now I'm just going to copy this bullet point. Let's say maybe room for 5. I'm going to use this grid arrange to spread them out properly. We want number of rows, 5 rows, row offset, and let's reposition this. All right, so giving us some space here. I'm done with that grid arrange. We can get rid of that. If you want these to animate on as well, we could do that. Let's set an animation parameter here for one of these. We'll start at 0. We'll advance it up to 100. Hit set key. Before we copy that animation, let's just make sure it's the right speed that we want it. That looks good. Also, let's scale this little bullet point on when it text animates on as well. So we'll just scale it up. So now we hit play and you can see how that takes over. Let's make that a little bit quicker. Maybe adjust that. All right, 2 ways that we can do. We either copy these animations down to each thing. So for instance, I want the scale onto there and that rectangle, and or you could just delete all these things and recopy that topmost container. So I'm just going to drag these text effects down onto each thing, and I'm also going to drag the rectangle animation onto each container as well. All right, we got our bullet points. Again, we should go back and change this, each one technically, to bullet point 2, 3, 4, 5. To save a little bit of time, we're just going to keep moving on. I think you get the point of that. The big thing here is that we want to create a switch and how we set this thing up here. So let's close that up. We want to give the producer and or trio operator control to select what they want. We're going to use an OMO for that. So we go into tools and there's a OMO control in here. So it allows them to say, okay, I want a headshot. No, I want the bullet points. So by using this little control here, they'll be able to choose one or the other. And this is really eliminating however many scenes they get picked from. So it's really a little bit more efficient in that there's only one scene, but there's more options within this scene for them. Probably will cut down on confusion. Okay, now we need to figure out how we want to label this for the producer. So we go into the control plugins, and we know that we need this text or the title. So we're going to drag that control text down onto it. The field identifier, we're going to leave at 1 because that's probably the first thing they want to be able to change. I'm just going to leave everything else as is. Notice it did drop that object down onto there as well. The next thing you have here is the option to switch it. We have an OMO on here, so let's drag the control OMO onto there. We're going to say field identifier 2, since that's probably the second option that we want to give them. And the headshot, since we do want to swap out an image here, we have a control image. So we can slide this control image, and that's going to allow them to select a new image. And if you want, when we get into parameters or switches like this, you can come up with your own naming conventions. I'm going to call that one 20, so we know that that's the headshot. And the bullet points here, we want to be able to change the text on that. So let's drag this one down. We're going to just worry about the field identifiers. I'm going to start with the field identifier 30. I'm going to make the next one 31. Again, this is all up to you how you figure this out or your naming conventions. We just need to make sure that each one is different. So this one's 33, and let's make this one 34. That way, when the producers come in here, they will first have the option to change the title. Then they can change either a headshot or bullet points. And they have the ability to change those bullet points. If we want to take it a step further and give them a choice to select how many bullet points, we can do that as well. So let's go into our tools. Let's drop an OMO onto that bullet point. And like I said, it will give us the ability to change this. Now with this one, it's a little bit different because we need to keep this visible. So if we add 2, 3, 4, 5, everything else is going to be visible. That means we need to add a control OMO on here as well. And again, however you want to give them control of this, if you want it to be the last option, the first option, second or third option for the producers, just be aware. So I'm just going to give it the option of, let's say, 40. Everything here should be above in Z position. So if you didn't do that yet, just make sure that you have that. The last thing that we need to do in this call up scene is fill out our transition logic. So we're going to come over to the transition logic and say turn that on. Again, layer identifier is the director. We called that OTS, all caps. The state identifier is A. The background scene is called master. And that should be it. We're going to save that. And if you want to go into Trio and test it, you can. We're going to go on to the next design element.